You're listening to Pitchside Pioneers, and I'm your host, Julia Anderson.
I just wanted people to understand that women could do sport and understand sport and play sport and talk about it as well as a man. And if I've helped change attitudes there, then that makes me happy.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Pitchside Pioneers. In this podcast, I will share the stories of women who are pioneers in football, whether that be in the media, in analytics, or on the pitch. Today I'm joined by sports journalist and broadcaster Sue Thearle, the first ever female reporter on BBC's iconic football show Match of the Day. After earning a degree in film, television, and photographic arts from Westminster University in 1988, Sue knew a career in television was the place for her. She also grew up playing football, but was kicked off of her school team because she was a girl.
That did genuinely plant a seed of burning injustice that I just really watched blossom over the years, but also the fact that there were no or very few women working in sports broadcasting, and it used to infuriate me because I felt like when I watched TV or listened to the radio, I knew as much, if not more, than these people, and I couldn't understand why there weren't women doing it. So I went and joined a local newspaper. I was really lucky. I saw an advert in The Guardian, actually, and because The Guardian used to do really good media jobs on a Monday, and I saw an advert and I thought, oh, wow, that looks really good for a local newspaper in Hertfordshire. And I sent my CV in, and I got an interview, and it was a woman on the panel, which was quite unusual in those days. She was kind of the head honcho, which was brilliant. And so she said to me as I was leaving, I've never met anybody who knows as much about football and sport as you do, never mind a woman. So I felt like that was a good sign. And it was, I got the job. So that's how I started in newspapers, really, and spent about 18 months there and got sort of headhunted by the Telegraph, really, because I won an award for my writing. And I had not written a word apart from at university. I'd not written a word. So I turned up on day one, and literally in my first 10 minutes, the editor of the newspaper came to find me and said, I need you to do an 850 word feature on this local golfer. And I went, okay. And I did. And these were in the days where mobile phones were, people had mobile phones, but they were still, this is the 90s. It wasn't, the technology then wasn't like it is now. So I did think to myself, what on earth am I going to do if he doesn't answer his phone? Like his landline. But he did, fortunately. So I did the feature, and yeah, the rest is sort of history.
At the time, Sue was one of only a handful of female football writers for national newspapers and was often the only woman in press boxes.
I think everybody has imposter syndrome. I don't care who you are. And I've met so many athletes and sports stars over the years, and they all say the same thing, and they all feel the same way, that they are in some way like a heartbeat away from being discovered in some way as not being as good as they are. And certainly in professional life, I come across it so regularly, and I think everybody feels it. I remember going to a golf day for the local newspaper, actually. So in the summer in particular, you would be sent to things where they knew there would be sort of well-known people, and it was like a pro-am golf day, and there were a couple of footballers there, and one of them, I won't name him because it's not fair, but them would go on to play for England. So I saw him in the bar after his round of golf, and I potted up to say hello and ask him for an interview, because I was already working for the local paper, but also working for other football publications and writing features for them. So if I ever saw a footballer at an event like that, I was always going to go and do a long interview, use some of it for the local paper and the rest of it for football magazines. So I went up and asked him for an interview, and he said, okay. And he was with another footballer, and you could tell they were thinking, this will be fun. I don't think they'd ever really been asked for an interview by a woman. And after 20 minutes of talking football with him and watching his reaction change, and I found that a lot, by the end of it, he just said to me, and this is his quote, he said, oh my goodness, who would ever have thought there'd be birds in football, right? Which was probably the biggest compliment he could have paid me at the time. But I always found that when you got over the hump of, what, really? You want to talk to me about football? Why? and then it became apparent that you understood football and you play football and all of that, then I actually found that I had really, really good interviews with players and managers and coaches and got good answers from them. That was kind of the flip side, if you like, of the boring, being sort of slightly a lonely trail at times, because there weren't other women that you could kind of talk to, or you couldn't console each other in the press box and go, God.
In 1996, Sue started at BBC Breakfast as a reporter before becoming the sports presenter, a role which she held for 13 years. She also became a regular contributor to Football Focus and Match of the Day. She has worked for just about every major sports outlet in the country, including ITV, Channel 5, TNT Sports, and Sky. With decades in the business, her approach to the scrutiny that comes with such a highly visible job has remained consistent. It also helps that even today, she limits her exposure on social media.
My friends who I've known for years and years and years will always be like, it is hilarious to us that you ended up doing a job where you put yourself in front of a camera and have people kind of watch you and judge you in every possible way, whereas I would just not. I'm very happy as a person to go under the radar and go unnoticed. So I just love the sport. I'm not interested in, nor have I ever been in, a profile, if you like, the profile that comes sometimes with being on television and in the media. It's not an ever, nor never will it ever be a driving force for me. So yeah, that bit of it I didn't particularly enjoy, but I recognized it came with the territory, and I wanted people to understand, desperately to understand, that women could enjoy sport too, and understand sport and understand it better than a lot of men, and write about it better than a lot of men, and broadcast about it better than a lot of men, and that was okay.
Sue became the first ever female reporter on BBC's Match of the Day during the 1997-98 season, and was regularly the only female voice in the show. A mistake while recording an FA Cup highlight package in 1998 sticks out as one of the biggest learning opportunities in her career.
When I worked on Match of the Day, I had an unfortunate mishap in that in a pre-recorded item, I made a mistake and I said, shit. So this is when you did Match of the Day, you had to record your voiceover, and normally you had loads and loads of time to do it. But this occasion was an FA Cup, I think second round, first or second round day, a million matches to get through. And there was myself and two other broadcasters, and we had, I think, 7 matches to write and voice, which is a lot. And I was the second of the 3 of us to voice. So you don't want to stuff up your colleague who's coming in behind you and leave them not enough time. So I was racing through and got to the last but one match of my roundup, and I just mucked up saying Basingstoke and something else. I can't quite remember the exact line that I muddled up, and I muddled it up and I went, oh shit, which you should never do around a microphone. But it was on a live microphone. So we went back and recorded it again, and I didn't think anything of it until the show went out, and there it was still in the show. And it shouldn't have been. And of course, that was the editor's mistake, but it was also my mistake, because I shouldn't have said that in the first place. So if that had happened, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years later, oh my God, that would have been monstrous. But it was bad enough because I was front page of I've still got it in my office, the Daily Star on the Monday morning with Botch of the Day. I mean, can you imagine that? I remember sitting there and I was watching it. Normally you would record your voiceover and you would leave. But on that occasion, because it was so close to the transmission time of this particular part of the show, I remember watching it in the gallery, which I never did, ever, ever, ever. So can you imagine just sitting there and hearing that and going, oh my God, oh my God. And a phone started ringing instantly. And I think it was network presentation saying, we've just heard a swear word on a BBC One programme. Was it a live voiceover? To which they said, no, something's gone wrong. We don't know what. We'll get to the bottom of it. And the worst thing about it was the editor of the show that night came into the gallery to find me, and he just gave me a hug and he said, we're going to laugh about this tomorrow, and I promise you it's not going to be a big deal. And I didn't believe him, because I was just sat there sort of blinking back tears thinking, this is where my career ends. Surely it ends here. And he said, the worst thing is I have to ask you to record that again, because we've got a morning version of tonight's show going out and we can't put it out again with that in it. Which, don't know how I managed to hold it together to go back in and do it again. I couldn't look at the editor who'd made the mistake, who said nothing. But the head of sport rang me first thing Monday morning. And it made a couple of late editions of the newspapers. And I thought, oh, this is going to be all right. And then on the Monday morning, the front page of the Daily Star came out, and I thought, oh, God, maybe it isn't. But he rang me the first thing Monday morning, and he was fantastic. And he just said, look, you are going to work for us for as long as you want. And it's not your fault. He said, I would maybe suggest in future, even if it's recorded, not to say anything. And he laughed, because by that stage it was kind of like, if I'd said something worse than that, that might have been harder. But because, you know, there isn't a person on the planet above a certain age who hasn't said shit, he was pretty sanguine about it. But so I've always really been grateful for that. So they gave me a ton of support. I knew so clearly what had happened, and it was really unlucky. I was unlucky, and I knew that. But I also knew I had a part. I had to own some of that. I did, and I thought I won't ever do that again, and I never have. And so, you know, experience is brilliant in that regard, isn't it? And it was really good for me, I think, just to have a little reminder that you need to be so careful, so careful. And yeah, I always have been ever since, always.
As one of the few visible women working in men's football in the late 90s and early 2000s, Sue is seen as a pioneer in the field. This isn't a title she set out for, but loves nothing more than seeing other women in press boxes, in bylines, in studios, and more.
I don't think of myself in that way, but I do appreciate that people, I suppose, would think that, just because of my, I guess, longevity, really. And if in some way someone was inspired to give it a go because they saw, you know, the presence of another woman doing it, then that is good enough for me. That's all that really matters. If they were encouraged to feel they could do something because they saw someone else doing it, then that's important, really. And I just wanted people to understand that women could do sport and understand sport and play sport and talk about it as well as a man. And if I've helped change attitudes there, then that makes me happy. It does make me happy.
There aren't many sporting events Sue hasn't covered. It's something she's grateful for and leaves her content with where she's at career-wise.
On the one level, the most unambitious person on the planet, or maybe I just enjoy what I do in sport so much. It doesn't really, I don't ever stop and think, oh my God, I have to do that before I stop, because otherwise I won't feel complete. I don't feel like that at all. Been at World Cups, I've been at Olympics, I've been at Ryder Cups, I've been at golf and tennis slams, I've been all over the world with my job, and I don't really, not that there's nothing left, I'm not saying that, but there's no kind of itch I feel like I need to scratch. And I've had such amazing experiences, especially with tennis and golf, definitely with golf, where you are literally walking almost hand in hand with Tiger Woods down the fairway at a Ryder Cup. I can't really ask for more than that. And that's an experience that's so unique. You never, ever underestimate the value of that. And I genuinely don't. And when the moment comes that I don't enjoy it quite as much as I do now, that will be the moment when I push off and do something else. I'm lucky because I found something in my life that I really enjoy doing. And I realize, as you know, years go by, you meet more and more people who have not done that. And I have friends in various walks of life in their 30s and 40s, and some of them have crossed into their 50s and they're still not doing what they wanted to do with their lives. And that's the one thing I say to my kids is just do what you want to do, and don't listen to anybody else but your own voice on that. And I have done what I wanted to do and been really happy doing it. And that doesn't mean every day is perfect at work. Of course it isn't. But by and large, you know, when the sport starts, I'm engrossed, and that's all that really matters. And I'm invested and I'm enjoying it. And a lot of people just cannot say that. And I do realize and recognize the value in that. So that's probably why I am quite content in a work sense, because there'll always be sport for me to talk about and watch. So happy days.
With how much she loves the work, it's easy to see why Sue Thearle is a role model for female sports journalists. I hope you enjoyed learning more about Sue's journey. Thanks for listening, and keep an eye out for the second episode of Pitchside Pioneers, which features pioneer of football analytics Sarah Rudd. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Julia Anderson, that's with an SEN, 18, or on YouTube at Julia_Anderson. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.